thing. So, anyway, Lord, thank you for this great day. Thank you for the people that are here. Thank you for this beautiful sanctuary that we get to use and worship you in. And Lord, I pray for all the sick people in our church. Pray for the sick people not here today. Lord, I pray for the family of those that were killed, the Nealons and the pilot and his family, and whoever all was impacted. I pray for them. Lord, I just pray, Lord, you touch this lesson, that I teach it the way you want it to be taught, and that it will be used the way you want it to be used. In Jesus' name, amen. So, I say it, a lot of people say it, y'all say it, I'm sure, but we break down our Christian life and we structure it. And that's just a human nature thing. We try to structure everything. Everything's got its place in life, right? You know, as parents, we're the boss, and kids are under us. And at work, we have bosses, and if you work at a place like High, I'm just a contractor, but Logan can tell you there's a stack of bosses above. I mean, like, there's very few people at the bottom, and then it just starts climbing the ladder. But that's the way it is in a lot of corporations. Even with me as a contractor, there's levels of people that I can go through to get something done if I need something done, or if I get in a situation with a contractor picking up. If I can't get answers here, I got another level I can go and get things done. But we always try to level things up. And as Christians, we do the same thing. We have the God, family, church, others, self thing that we do. And it's all good. But I sort of got convicted of this, and then I started researching it, and I pulled up some stuff, and I pulled up a lesson, not really a lesson, a writing that a pastor or a Christian had wrote, and I sort of used that as a guideline and sort of ran with it because he was going down the same road I was going down. I'm like, how can you structure things? God, family, church, other self. How can you structure that? How can you say everybody knows that God should be at the top of everything, but from there down, how can you put that in that order? Because when Jesus walked the earth, it was mixed up. You know, one day we just have this perfect get-together meeting, the next day we have this easy healing, and the next day we got to tote people up on the roof and lower them in. I mean, it was chaotic. There was no orderly fashion about it. Matter of fact, if you read, all you can about Jesus, you'll find out that really wasn't Jesus' thing, order. Now, they are some things that we're to live and abide by and all that, but to try to say one below God, like family and church and others and self, one is better and more priority than the other, I think that's a little messed up. And we could probably go through the Bible, and there's probably some people that could pick things out and say, oh, it says that here and it says that there. And yeah, and we can make sense of different things, but as a whole, I don't think that's what I got. I didn't get that out of the life of Jesus. I didn't get that. As long as God, in our case Jesus, at the center of everything, then everything should be all right. That's the way I see it. So let's just dive right into sort of what I come up with. So a lot of us growed up with a structure, right? We were taught that: God, family, church, other, self. And we were taught that because of people like me that said it. Like I said last week, regret is a life sentence. No, regret ain't a life sentence. I was confronted by one of my Christian friends, and he said, Gary, no, regret ain't a life sentence. Quit saying that. And when I got to thinking about it and studying on it, he was right. But I have said that a lot since my mom passed away. But I told y'all last week I was going to quit saying that. Because with God, all things are wiped away when we give it to Him. So if He wipes it away, we have to. Not saying it don't make me sad a lot of times when I think about maybe how much better things could have been if I'd have done this different. But then I have to just make myself stop and say, no, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to go down that road. Let's get back. When we rank things from top down, or we make a list and we write them from the top down, we're basically saying, without voicing it, that they have a priority in that order. So when I say God, family, church, other, self, it is basically me saying that is the order of life. That is the way that we should prioritize things. And so I think when we do that, we're just sort of mixing things up, whether we knowingly or unknowingly do it. Sometimes I think we do that because that's how we were raised. That's how we're trained to do things. If you're in business, you want everything in an orderly manner, right? If you're a pastor of a church, you want everything in an orderly manner. And there are things and times and places that is true. But in our Christian walk, I think I've got a better way of looking at things. And I think I have the way from my studying that I think that Jesus would more prefer. And I can back that up. And like I said, you can probably pick it apart piece by piece, taking things out of different contexts. But hear me out before you totally throw me under the bus. So it does make sense that we put God first. But let's don't say God, family, church, other, self. God is a title. We have the God of everything. I get that. But in the way that it's said a lot of times, it is said as a title. We know living in our world that there are many people that claim different things as what? God. A lot of people claim worldly things as God. There's people that has claimed statues as their God. So as Christians, we need to do away with that. As Christians, that top level, if we're going to have levels, or our top priority in life needs to be what? Jesus. We need to take that away. Jesus is the likeness and image, and if we see Jesus, we see God, right? So we don't even need to be saying God, we need to be saying Jesus. We need to put a name with the position. So if Jesus is our priority, which he should be, instead of making a list, a priority list, shouldn't we just say, without trying to decide who's second, third, fourth, or fifth, shouldn't we just say, all right, Jesus? I envisioned it like this, and I told Tammy yesterday I wished I'd had some poster board, and I didn't stop and get any, but I changed my mind after that anyway. So if you do the list, you have everything like this, and willingly or unwillingly, you think of that as a power. The top has more power. The further down you go, less power, or less prominence, or less important. But let's do it this way. Instead of doing a list, let's just say we draw a big old circle. And the line of that outside of that circle is our life. Everything in it is our life. But that line that borders our life, let's just say that's Jesus. Alright, so the circle as a whole is our life. The line around our life is Jesus, right? So, because as Christians, we give him our life. So if Jesus has our life, and this line is represented as Jesus around our life, then we're going to put everything else in it, then we're getting rid of that structure, right? So we're going to go away from that. Why are we going to go away from that? Well, there's different places in the Bible that talks about different things. I want us to look at, let me find it here. I'm maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm going to talk about all of it. I want to go to Matthew chapter 22 and 36 through 40, King James Version, roughly. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to give you the gist of it. Here, Jesus identify the greatest commandments as thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. Jesus also said that the second greatest commandment is thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So, that's where I'm getting the basics of my plan. So if Jesus said to love thy neighbor as thyself, so we got our first level right here, love thy God with all thy heart. God, Jesus represents our God, and Jesus died for us, so Jesus is in our spot, and so Jesus covers our life, right? So if the first commandment is to love God, and the second greatest is to love everyone else, then that structure from Jesus down should be all encompassed into one thing. And that is, we handle all those other things with Jesus attached. Not as separate. Like, we don't just say, alright, Jesus is number one. So, Jesus, you got 95% of my day. The other 5% of my day, I got all these other things I got to deal with. I got to go do this. I got family I got to go see. The church is just going to have to wait, because I got, family function. And then other people's got to wait, because by the time I go to work and I give Jesus 95% of my time and I do things with the kids and I go to church, I ain't got time to do mission work. I ain't got time to go pass out food, and I surely ain't got time to do anything for myself. No, not the way it works, right? But if you do the structure, that's what it makes it look like. It makes it look like you got this much time for the Lord, you got this much time for family, this much time. And I'm going to just say this all over and over again, because that's how we see it. It's in our mind. It's etched in our brain that's how we see things. So if loving the Lord with all thy heart and mind, and then loving others as thyself, well, that right there is all we need to know about the structure in our life. Because guess what? Past Jesus is everything else. And it involves what? Other people. Family, church, other people, and even ourselves. We're all included in that. So, if we are loving Jesus and giving him our whole life like we did the day we got saved, if we're doing everything that we told Jesus we would and then some, and something family comes up, instead of leaving Jesus at home and we go to this family event, no, we got to take Jesus with us. Because why? Because Jesus is that circle around our what? Life. I envisioned it this morning, and y'all going to laugh at me, but I like vegetable soup. I envision Jesus at the pot. And there's a lot of great things that go in that pot, but without the pot, vegetable soup would be a mess. You couldn't make it. It would not, no way, in any way, make a form. You couldn't put it in a frying pan and make vegetable soup, right? It would get too hot. You'd burn all the taters. There'd be fried taters and juice. That's all it'd be. But once you get your pot, which is Jesus, and you start throwing the life of the soup in that pot, you got potatoes. We like to put, some kind of meat in ours, that spices up a little. I like mine a little spicy. I like, I don't know what all Tammy puts in it, but a little jalapenos don't bother me. I love jalapenos. Not everybody puts jalapenos in their vegetable soup. I like mine a little spicy. But we put beans in it, tomatoes, and we got all this stuff we put in it. But you know what? It's all held together by the pot. By the pot. You know what else? The heat that comes up to the pot is distributed by what? The way the pot's made. How we live our life for the Lord defines the way the pot is made. It's always different. Some people might have a pot that, Tammy's mama had a pot that was really big. Why? She had 12 kids. Beverly and Kate, well, me and Tammy right now, But Beverly and Kate probably has a lot smaller pot. Their vegetable soup pot ain't nearly that big. And that's the way our Christian walk is. We handle things differently. I got sort of tore up this week. Didn't even tell Tammy about it, but I am a contractor for Hall. Y'all know that. I got this gig. There was another guy had this gig that I have now. But life happened. Things in his life. He may or may not have made bad choices. I don't know him that well. But he was going through some stuff. And because of that, he wasn't as reliable. And that's how Hal come and recruited me. I didn't go after his work. They brought me in. And over time, I've met this gentleman a few times. But not a lot. The last time I seen him, he looked not good. But I was always friendly, and he was always friendly with me. When the first time I met him, he gave me some pointers. I had never hauled steel parts. I'd hauled equipment, but I'd never hauled steel parts. And so he gave me a few pointers. He was a real friendly guy, real nice guy, but life had just happened. Found out this week that he had passed away. You know Heath, Bobby, I don't know if you knew that, but Heath had passed away. And all week I've been bothered by that because I never really talked to Heath because I don't know for a fact, but I think Heath was a little younger than I am. And that we talked about different things, and I remember him talking a time or two about praying for different situations in his life, and I'd always say, yeah, I got you. I'll handle that. But I don't know that we ever really went into a deep discussion about whether he was ready to go. I don't know. He talked about praying a lot, so I'm hoping that's the case. But it had eaten my lunch this week about that because, like I said a while ago, my pot's made a little bit different. One thing I do not want people to do is shy away from Gary because all he talks about is trying to get me to come to church and all that. I do want to get everybody around me saved, but I got a way of doing it. And not necessarily a certain way. It just depends on how the Lord leads me. And trying to win people and inviting people to church. And inviting them to get saved, more importantly than coming to church. Anyway, so all of our pots are different. But the main thing is that Jesus is the pot. And as we put stuff in it, as long as it goes in with the life that Jesus planned. That's another thing we need to talk about. We're making vegetable soup. We don't need to put the ingredients in it for fried apple pies. As much as we love fried apple pies, that's not what we're doing. Jesus has set forth a plan for us in our life. And in this case, it's vegetable soup. We don't need to do fried apple pies if the Lord's called us to do soup. There's a lot of things in ministry I think would be cool to do. That's not what the Lord called me to do. I wonder why He called me to teach and preach. I still question that, and I shouldn't, but I just don't know where I fit into that picture. The Lord showed me that He called me for a reason, so just get up there and do it. So that's what I do. Don't ask questions, stupid. Just do it. And we don't let our kids use that term stupid. We won't let all in know. But I use that to get my point across. And relative to what the Lord knows, I'm clueless. So, just get up there and do what it is I tell you to do, and you'll do it in a way that is honorable, I'm sure, or I wouldn't have called you to do it, right? And so that's what we got to do. We got to make sure that we concentrate on the life that Jesus has given us to live. So, potatoes, tomatoes, no dough for fried apple pies. We don't need canned biscuits thrown in there. Y'all may do that, but we don't do that in ours. So, with love, and we've talked about this several times, love is an act of doing. Love does. And I've taught y'all about the books I've read about love. and about how God and about how Jesus, He is the living, when He walked this earth, He was a living example, and today He lives that in our heart, the love thing. He commanded us to do it. So, we get down to these other people. Let's just say that we're a family. We've got the Lord involved in our family. I've been honored over the years at the way I work with people in my family. My family now, used to be I never was asked to bless the food. Now I'm asked every time we have a meal, a family gets there. I'm talking about amongst our big family, they ask me to bless the food. I'm working my way in. And I'm telling everybody they need to be ready to go. Me and Daddy has a lot of talk about different things. And one of my big things is with my family and my dad and all them, I'm like, it's all good and fine. But if we're not ready to go, nothing else matters. That is my thing I say. I want them to know that. I want that etched on their heart that it's all good. That's why I say if we carry love with us in dealing with family and church and other people, the Lord will lead us. If we've got Jesus, Jesus is love. If we use Jesus, not use Jesus, but allow Jesus to work through us and family, church, and others, guess what? He can also do that in ourselves. You know who gets left out of this list most of the time? Ourselves. You know why? Because tradition has put ourselves at the bottom of the list. Me and Tammy's had this talk this week. When me and Tammy first married, we've been blessed for 36 years. We've had down times, things ain't been so great, but we've been blessed. There was a time in our life we'd go to the Smoky Mountains every 6 or 8 weeks. We still love the Smoky Mountains today. We took time for each other and for Keisha. When I say Keisha, it was a lot of years before Thomas came along. Keisha was potty trained in a Dodge Caravan going across the Blue Ridge Mountains because we had a potty in the van. So when Keisha had to go potty, we stopped the van. Mom got out and Keisha pottied in the van. What I'm saying is we took time for ourselves, and over the years we've quit doing that. Me and Tammy's had this talk this week. When we sold or started selling off our company and we ventured into what we're doing now, we sort of promised ourselves we would never get in the position we were in. Even had we not had a lot of debt, the business itself run us. And we left us out. We gave our all to our family and whatever. Keisha at Auburn, Thomas in school at UNA, and Mama, Daddy, Mama at the time, and Dad, and it's a natural thing for people to do, leave ourselves out. And so that, by seeing that at the bottom of man's list, self, we just naturally, without thinking, we put ourselves at the bottom. Not how love works. Jesus is truly the definition of love. So if Jesus is truly the definition of love, and He's the man, so He can do a lot of things at one time. He can love our family. He can love our church. He can love other people and us at the same time. But we forget that. We want to do things our way, and we want to think about the list. There's a prime example of that when we read about David. David wanted to protect his family and friends. He wanted to kill this big old giant. But I can imagine, I kind of think he'd have to be taller than me, because everybody's taller than me, but I can imagine he wasn't a very tall guy. But they didn't call him names or nothing like Ricky and Pastor Kate does me all the time, but I'm just throwing that out there. No, they don't give me too hard a time. I got thick skin at a very young age, and I love it because I know they like me if they pick on me. I pick on their bald heads too. I mean, them too. I pick on them too. So, and, it goes both ways. If you can't give it, if you can't take it, don't give it, right? So, but if Jesus is truly the love, all right, let's go back to what I was going to say. David, he was all out. He had been protected by the Lord and everything he done. He talked about protected by bears and lions and all this. Well, here the king was going to give him all this armor. So you see what was happening right here? He was doing what I talked about earlier. He had God at his forefront in his life, but he was going to walk over here and let the king give him some armor so he could fight this giant. Even though God had been with him all this time, he thought he needed the king, the world, help protect him from this giant, right? But when he finally come to his conclusions, come to his realization what he was doing, he said, no, that ain't the way this works. I can't use this. This is not what has gotten me here. I'm just changing up the words, making it redneck. But anyway, this is not what got me here. God got me here. He's had my back all this time. I don't need all this heavy armor and this, sword and stuff that I know nothing about. I just need what God's given me this whole time. So he tried to step out from and go by the list and step out and go to family and let them help him. He was leaving God behind for just a little bit. But then he realized that ain't the way you do this. So in protecting his family and his friends, he realized it was going to take getting back in where he belonged and letting God be his circle around his life and letting him complete everything that goes in it. So when he stepped back into the circle like he was supposed to be, the one that God surrounds him with, he went out and defeated the giant. And he said, my Lord had protected me. Y'all have heard the whole story. My Lord protected me, got me this far, and he'll get me through this. And he did. Got him through this. But he had to get back in line and figure out what it was that he was supposed to do. I think those lists, like we talked about, sometimes make us imbalanced, not aware of what we're doing. And I think that's why things like what David done happens in our life, because we get too caught up on the list. All those things in that list are important, just like all the ingredients of vegetable soup. You can't have good vegetable soup unless you have all the ingredients. But it don't matter if you got all the ingredients if you don't have the pot. Right? And if the pot's not made for vegetable soup, it's not going to work. David had a hole in his pot for a moment, and all of his stuff was leaking out. It wasn't until he realized he had a hole there that it wasn't going to work, that he stopped up the hole and made it work, that thing turned out to be more successful. It wasn't going to work like the way he was doing it. The top-down structure is replaced by a Jesus-covered pattern that encompasses every relationship that we have. Jesus is truly the top of the list, but he's not the top. He's what surrounds us. The replacing God with the name Jesus takes a stand. There's nothing vague about it. When we say Jesus, it lets the world know who we serve. It's not a generic term that the world uses. There ain't but one God. We know that as Christians. But when we use the term God, we need to let them know we serve Jesus. Jesus shapes every facet of our relationship and informed our responses to each one. So in other words, whatever we're going through, Jesus will decide how we handle that based on the size of the pot, the form of the pot, how we have the pot that we picked. In other words, if Jesus gives us a big pot, that means we're to serve a bunch of people. If he gives us a little pot, we're to serve a little people. If he gives us a red pot, well, we might need to go to Uganda. If he gives us a yellow one, well, we might need to go to Fort Payne. See what I'm saying? The stress of trying to prioritize which relationship is more important is replaced with a pattern of how Christ lived and wants us to live. A pattern of self-giving love for all. A Jesus-covered pattern makes our life more adaptable to the highs and lows of real life. Because life happens. Jesus lived life. And we can read about his life in it. Wasn't nothing uniform about Jesus' life. Nothing. The only thing that was uniform is what he taught us. The lessons he taught us were the same. Jesus is the line that creates our outer circle, our pot, our lives. When we place everything into this pot, no matter how you stir the pot, it's still life. And it's life happening. We stir up all the ingredients, guess what? Don't matter. As long as we keep them in the pot. As long as Jesus has our back. As long as Jesus is the one taking care of the ingredients on the inside. When we read about the life of Jesus and how he wants us to live, we can clearly see that without God, we are nothing. Take away the pot, the ingredients fall out on the floor. No vegetable soup. Without Jesus covering, without him in our life, we're just another creature walking the earth aimlessly, no direction. Jesus is actually the answer to the question. Is it a list or is it a covering? Is it a prioritized list, or is it a covering? Jesus answers that question. Past Jesus, as long as Jesus is included in everything that we do, that covers the list. What is the correct order of life? The answer is just simple. Throw everything else into your walk with Jesus, and he'll take care of the rest. Love you guys.